Any? Thank you. Number 3, to recognize the city as a recipient of the 2022 Secretary of Defense Employer Support Freedom Award. Been looking forward to this, and Director of Human Resources, Charlotte Walker, is going to do some introductions for us.
Rebecca Phillips, she works with me. She's our senior HR generalist. She's been here almost 15 years, and she is also a military member, so she's currently active duty. And then I'll get her to give you some background on the award and how it came about.
Hello, everyone. As Charlotte said, I am Rebecca. I work in HR. So I was given the award from one of my coworkers on Fort Hood. She had sent the award to me and said, I know that you enjoy working for the city and you should look into this award. It's for employers who support their reservists and National Guard that go on missions. And I had a couple missions that were coming up. Bless Charlotte. I had just got hired September 2020, and I had to go to school for professional development, and I was going to be out for a month, and then I had to go to another school for professional development, and Charlotte was fully supportive of me. And when I saw the award, I was like, I have to give it to Charlotte, because not only was I paid through the city, which is an incentive for us as employees of the city, but Charlotte called and checked on me while I was in school and just did good things for me and helped me integrate back into my role whenever I returned. So I just thought it was really great that I was able to do something for her and the city. But in regards to the award, Ron Rivers here can explain the award more in detail. I don't know details of the award, but I know that it's for them.
Sure, we do that. Good evening, everyone. Mayor, I'm here to present this Freedom Award to the city of Belton. The Freedom Award was introduced in 1996, pardon me, under the auspices of the ESCR and the Secretary of Defense. The Freedom Award is one of the highest award that is given to any employer who has employed anyone that is in a Guard and Reserve. And it is also backed by the Department of Defense and the ESDR, which was established in 1972 under Congress. And the Freedom Award is normally presented to any employer who has shown outstanding, unwavering support for any soldiers that are in the Guard or Reserve. The Freedom Award also is one of the highest in a series of awards that is given to any employer for any exceptional support that they have provided to soldiers that are in the Guard and Reserve. And the Department of Defense realizes that, and in support of their employers, anyone who nominates an employer gets to receive a Freedom Award, which is the highest award that is given. And Sergeant First Class Phillips saw it necessary to present it to the city, and I'm here to present it to Mr. Craig Pearson, who is going to accept the award for the city. And in addition, we also have a statement of support for him to sign for us, which is stating that the city will continue to be in support of any soldiers that are in the Guard and Reserve. And we also have a coin, a 50-year coin to present to the city. It's a 50-year commemorative coin that is given to any member who signs, or any employer who signs the statement of support in recognition of the ESCR, which was established in 1972. Okay, and we're going to present this award to Mr. Pearson. And give me one moment.
We asked Mr. Pearson to accept this award tonight because he's our own veteran up here. He's a retired colonel from the United States Army and served honorably for many years.
All right, thank you. So- My coin seemed to have slipped out. Okay, I'm going to present then the city this award, the Freedom Award to the city of Belton. And this is in recognition of all the diligent support that has been provided to Sergeant First Class Phillips. And we thank you very much for all of the efforts. And also, I have a statement of support from the side. In recognition, and also, that also will be given to the city of Belton as well. For continued support. Well, if the mayor would like to sign it.
Yeah, let's get the mayor or the city manager to sign it. I'm just a peon council person.
No, you're not.
Okay. Yes, I know.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. We really appreciate your taking the time to come. Certainly, we're proud of the award. We're proud of the folks who work here for us that have served our country.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for having me here. Thank you. sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank
And I
you.
want to say how proud I am to represent all y'all who have served or are serving. Thank you.
Great.
Come on the side of the podium so we can get this out of the way.
Sam, I thought there was a report that every every branch of the military has been represented, but also 27 employees, I think it was. 27%, 49 employees fall under this umbrella, which is an amazing number. Nobody in the Space Force.
Well, remember now, we had a little bit over here, right at the corner of this TV is running.
Yeah, and the yellow were taking me.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you. guys.
Get in there, Colonel.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
For you guys. Okay.
Squeeze a little bit.
Just mean we're gonna go fake it. We'll get you $1 here. Sam, I got. Marty coming. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Got y'all. Right.
Yeah, right here.
Before everybody runs out, just for a second, I want to certainly give a special thank you for State Representative Hugh Shine being here with us tonight. Former Mayor Bill Holmes is a Navy man. Marty Janczak was an admiral in the United States Navy, and Frank Minosky does not work for the city, but he should. He's always around. So we appreciate all of you being here. And as John was mentioning, we have 49 current city employees out of 180 that have military service. That's a huge amount. 27% of current Cobb and Belton city employee families are represented by the forces, and all branches, again, except the Space Force. But we're certainly glad, and we're certainly proud that y'all are here. We appreciate your service to the city and the community. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And y'all watch KXTX tonight because Rebecca's going to be on the news. So
Glad you got to see me, Frank. Glad you got to see me.
All right. That was fun. Move on to the real stuff tonight, but
Right then.
not quite as much fun. Items 4 through 6 are on the consent agenda and may be adopted by the council in one motion if discussion desired by the council on any one item, it may be removed and prior to voting it and considered separately. Item 4 is to consider the minutes of previous meetings, July 26th, City Council Planning and Zoning Commission joint workshop and meeting, and the July 26, 2022 City Council meeting. Item 5 was to consider appointments to the Lena Armstrong Public Library Board of Directors. We are appointing Melinda Lanham to replace Peggy Williams, and we appreciate Mrs. Williams' several years of service to that board. And item 6, to consider a resolution approving a negotiated settlement between the Atmos Cities Steering Committee and the Atmos Energy Corporation Midtex Division regarding the company's 2022 rate review mechanism filing. Anyone wish to pull any of those items?
I move we approve the agenda or the items on the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 7 is to hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending Chapter 6 Fire Protection and Prevention of the Code of Ordinances. Here a report from Fire Chief John Fontenot.
Thank you guys for sending some well wishes my way when I was in the hospital. I really appreciate it. Yeah,
We're
but
glad you're here.
yes.
couldn't ask for a better result. My blood tests are all come back normal. Everything is good. So I appreciate it. As Mayor said tonight, we're going to look at a proposed amendment to the Code of Ordinance. And I kept it short and sweet. If I can get it to change. Thank you. So in one of the council meetings, it was asked that we go back and take a look at the fee schedule and make sure that we were capturing things correctly and accurately. And as part of that, we went back to take a look at our fee schedule. But what we did, we realized was there really wasn't a description in the ordinance that allowed us or gave us guidance. So to create that transparency for the community, we went in and created this ordinance. Next. So section 6.4 explains the scope of the fire department cost recovery program. And section 6.5 defines in more detail the types of recovery efforts and the process of collecting. Go ahead. So this isn't new to the fire service. This is actually something that most fire departments do. Just a real quick research that I did, excuse me. Approximately 60 different fire departments just in Central Texas has a cost recovery program. 250 plus throughout the state. And I named a few local that I could quickly find. Round Rock, Harker Heights, Hutto, just to name a few. They're all listed there and all of them have something very similar to what we're proposing. So the fire department cost recovery fees would include standbys at special events, malicious incidents, hazardous materials, technical rescue incidents, motor vehicle collisions, non-permitted burns, permitted burns that get out of control, wildfires caused by negligence, nuisance incidents and false alarms, and then out of city responses not covered by automatic aid agreements. Things that are not included, we will not be having any fees associated with medical response. Typical structure fires won't create any fees. Lifting assistance, public assist not caused by recklessness or neglect. Weather-related events, in-kind services approved by city administrated. And one thing worth noting is motor vehicle accidents, only the insurance companies would get an invoice. a lot of insurance, most insurance companies out there, you already pay a premium for emergency response. And we're just trying to capture that premium. So any comments or questions?
Recovery from uninsured.
That hasn't been addressed in the ordinance. What I would hate to do is send somebody that's been in an accident,
Sure.
that's already had a really bad day, an invoice for our bills. And I could write it to where the uninsured could get, but that's kind of hard to track. And again,
curious.
trying to keep it fair for everybody. And most of the bills that will be sent out for motor vehicle accidents, about 75 to 80% are not people that live in Belton. They're people that are passing through.
Do you think we've missed some hazardous materials, cost recovery?
In the 2 years that I've been here, no, but in the past, yes. And there's been some collections that haven't been sought after.
I can think of some cans exploding on I-35 and some other instances that we've had that cost quite a bit out there.
But this is our way of doing what the council asked, going back, looking at our fee schedule and really trying to do a good job and a responsible job of collecting fees, recovery fees.
Thank you, Chief.
I think, so just one question, one comment. Again, good job. I'm glad you guys are doing this. The question I have is when we determine malicious, let's say it's a restaurant, and it's habitual at a particular place, is that going to the people that are involved, or is it going to because it doesn't really say who's the liable party. Does that need to be addressed?
It depends on the act that you're calling malicious. If it's a false alarm, like a smoke detector that's in a fire alarm system that is malfunctioning, then that will go to the occupant, not the occupant, the building owner, because it's his responsibility to maintain that alarm system. Does that answer?
No, I'm thinking about, I don't know. I'll make it up, right? Minors in possession get into a fight at a place, and that's the fourth time it's happened. Who gets the bill?
That would be a good call for PD. We would not be involved.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was just making something up, just trying. Anyway, it's okay. It's just, I think that, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Chief, if you got one bad alarm just because of a speck of dust on a sensor, that doesn't get you a bill, but if it's happening 3 times a week, it gets you a bill.
If it happens 3 times, after the 3rd time in a year, you'll start getting an invoice.
Okay, Chief, thanks.
That's pretty standard.
Yeah, that's very standard across the industry.
At this time, we'll open the public hearing. If anybody wishes to speak for or against amending the ordinance. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and open it up for council deliberation. Or a motion?
I move we approve agenda item number 7 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 7. All those in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item 7 passes unanimously.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And again, it's good to see you back.
Yes. Mhm.
Item 8 is to consider authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Covey Planning and Landscaped Architecture for planning services to develop the downtown Belton Code relating to the implementation of the Imagine Belt Downtown Marketing Plan. I see Travis and Josh are here with us again tonight. We appreciate that. Mr. Van Til.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much. Okay, good deal. So the purpose of this item is to consider a proposal from our friends at Covey, which we solicited from them for planning services relating to the implementation of the Imagine Belton plan. And just quick background on the plan. As you know, the BEDC hired Covey to develop the Imagine Belton plan. That was the name that the steering committee came up with eventually. And it was intended to guide investment in the core of the Belton community, which is more or less the downtown area. And as you know, the plan was adopted by both the BDC board, the county commissioners, as well as the city council. Moving right along. So one of the strategic initiatives in the plan included evaluating the development regulatory environment that we have. And the plan recommended to preemptively change the regulatory environment to allow the desired development to occur almost by right, and recommended the creation of certain planning tools, which included a PD or an overlay or some type of special zoning criteria related to the downtown area, the area that was covered by the plan. And so in the proposal that we received from Covey, it includes an evaluation of existing city codes and ordinances, explore the development of an overlay zoning district. And that would help us to find and soften some code conflicts that may exist out there. For instance, there might be some historic preservation ordinance requirements that we need to integrate into the planning process, and to ensure that no barriers exist, or to lower the barriers to the issuance of the permit or the permit issuance. It also includes the identification of possible financial incentives to induce development and to address transportation needs in the downtown area, and to prepare a development guidebook. And this will be a guidebook for the study areas, and they will help folks to understand what the development process is in relationship to the plan. So there's some degree of predictability in the development process as it articulates with the new plan. Let's talk about money for a minute. The cost of services is $77,500, and the BDC has agreed to share that cost at $60,000, and the TERS has agreed to do the other 40, and I believe that recommendation has come from their last board meeting back in August the 2nd. There's also a component for plan review in terms of when folks do submit plans for development in the downtown area. And so there are some other funds that are budgeted that will cover those expenses. And so our recommendation at this point is that you authorize our city manager to execute an agreement with Covey for the implementation of the Imagine Belton plan in these particular areas. Happy to try and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Bob. Questions or comments for Bob?
Bob, were all those areas, would that include all those areas like the fields and I think University Heights, and not just downtown, but all those
The six-
outliers as well as downtown? that
Yes,
they
sir. The
identified?
6 areas that were identified in the plan. Yes, sir.
Good.
Any other questions?
I move we authorize the city manager to execute the downtown Belton program with Kobe.
Second. We have a motion and a second to authorize the city manager to execute the professional services agreement with Covey Planning. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate what y'all have been doing and look forward to continuing to work with you. Some exciting plans for downtown Belton. Item number 9, I believe it is. Consider a resolution rescinding the authorization provided by resolution 2022-17-R for a debt commitment of $22 million for water treatment capacity with BCWCID number 1. Mr. Liskey.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is a pretty important item. Actually, items number 9 and 10 are related that we'll deal with tonight. The first one, number 9, I'll handle, and then Mike will handle item number 10. These items are related because our water provider, BCWCID number 1, has decided to defer a water plant expansion at this time. This is kind of a summary of what's been going on. We've dealt with this item a number of times over the last year. In April, the council authorized an amendment to a previously approved resolution that committed our need for water treatment at the plant. We needed additional 4 million gallons a day, and the cost to the city of Belton was estimated at that time to be $22 million. In July, the district came back to us and said that their effort to secure support across the area, all the entities that were participants in the plant, at a total of almost $153 million had failed to materialize. And so they indicated at that time that that project was not going to proceed. You recall, obviously, we've had many discussions about the water rates and sewer rates coming forward as a part of the budget process. We had folded this prospective debt issue by the district into our 5-year utility rate study. And obviously, the plan was to expand the Belton plant while the Stillhouse plant had just become operational. And so there was a time period within which we could do that. We did not need or do not need the additional capacity till 2035, but in water planning, that's not very far off. And so we had decided to participate. The council, supported that. But lacking entity support, the project is not going to occur at this time. And we certainly had some discussion with Ricky Garrett about it. It's not going to happen within the 5-year time cycle of our current rate study. So that certainly has some significant implications. $22 million in debt over a 30-year funding cycle mounted to an average of about $1 million a year to us for that 30-year time period. That is not going to happen right now, but it's not to say it's not going to happen at some point in time. It is certainly, and council needs to be fully aware, that is a future expense that will come back to us at some point in time. But the exact timing of that and the amount of that expense, how it's actually configured and when it's done, how they'll do it with trying to take a part of the Belton plant down at one time is to be determined. So that's a decision for the future, but we're obviously going into this with our eyes open, recognizing that that's going to be needed at some point in time. So our recommendation to you tonight is to rescind the authorization that you provided in that earlier resolution for debt commitment of $22 million. Any questions I could answer?
Sam, are we at any design cost or preliminary cost associated with that
The
project?
design costs had been folded in already into our debt, that our annual fees that we pay to the district. So they had already done that, and that will sit on the shelf and certainly be available at whatever point in time it comes back. And so we'll be looking to the district to kind of keep us on notice about when that would come forward. So certainly those costs have been borne by all the entities up to this point.
Do you think all participants will be financially prepared to participate down the road?
That's certainly a council decision for all those councils. I think the issue here was one of the larger entities had just felt like their need was not demonstrated in a timely manner. They did not need it in a time that they felt like a debt issuance at this time would make any sense to them. So I think everybody recognizes this is a need that we all have. Everybody knows our water capacity, our water treatment needs, and recognize that this consortium of cities and water districts that participate have to pay the freight basically and get it done. And so we certainly, that's a decision for the future, but certainly Belton has indicated its commitment, and we hope the other parties will agree as well.
We're a small user in that group, though.
We are.
When should we get excited about 2030?
Certainly not for at least 5 years, I would hope, but perhaps towards the end of our 5-year, we typically do a rate study every 5 years. And so as we approach the end of this cycle, we certainly will be in close communication with the district about what comes next.
If these kinds of thoughts continue to come from other entities, in our wildest imagination, is there any way as a community that in the future we could do anything semi-independently?
Very challenging because we are a small player. We have a limited amount of water rights for us to, as the vernacular says, put a straw in the lake. It would be pretty difficult for us to afford all the capital costs to accomplish that. So this is one of those circumstances where we're better as a member of the group. But to be determined, I think, future decision.
Sam, are there any compounding issues created for us just by postponing this project, or for the region as a whole that are concerning to you? Or
not really. Our need was not until 2035. I think one of the other smaller districts was 2029. And Ricky's comment was that he felt like we could probably make some adjustments and deal with the earlier needs in a shorter time frame, but no real concern other than the recognition that the need to expand the plant is not going to go away.
And a little short-term relief for our water. and sewer
Absolutely
rates.
important, very important issue, and Michael covered that. Yeah, we're certainly not disappointed in that fact that this will be a positive impact to water rates in the short term.
As John just alluded to, I think it's a reprieve because we know that good Lord's not making any more water and there are a lot more people who want to use it here in Central Texas. So
Right.
I'm glad that we don't have to raise water rates the way we talked about. That is a nice thing, but we are the smaller player in terms of WCID number one compared to Killeen with 140 some odd thousand folks.
Right.
We're the small fry. So I'm glad we postponed the rate hike, but the problem's not going to go away and it's just going to get worse in the future, I'm afraid.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments for Sam?
With that being said, I move we rescind the authorization provided by resolution 2022-17R for debt commitment of $22 million for the water treatment capacity with BCWCID number one.
Second.
Thank you.
Let's check the resolution. Where did you get that number, Dan? I think it's
Off of the staff agenda item 22-7.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking at something different.
The second page is from our previous meeting.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to rescind the authorization. All those in favor of rescinding the authorization, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Item number 10, related item, to consider a resolution rescinding the endorsement of the 5-year rate structure approved in resolution 2022-21R and endorsing an adjusted multi-year defined rate structure that is designed to provide financial stability for the water and sewer fund. Mr. Rogers.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Sam covered all this first slide, so there's no point in going over all that again. The reason why we need to do this. So because the effect of that $22 million was significantly material to our rate study, we decided to reach out to our consultant yet again for a revision to the 5-year plan. And so she did that. And I wanted to kind of show you, I'm going to have to point, I can't do my John Madden tonight because this thing's not working right. But in resolution 2022-21R, City Council endorsed this 5-year rate plan. And you can see the ones I want you to kind of pay attention to are these top ones here. So most of our customers are in this 5/8 and 3/4, that first line up there. And we were scheduled to have, based upon the study, a rate increase in 23, rate increase in 24, same in 25, et cetera. And so if you kind of pay attention to those first few there, and then this last one, I want you to pay attention to this 12-inch. So when the consultant went in and removed that, those expenditures, and they went from $650,000 or so in 2023 up to $1.2 million in 2027 as that debt service was growing. When you pull those out, the new recommendation is this. So that top line there, you can see it changes significantly. So we went from, say, this to where you had these gradual increases every single year to the new study would show essentially no base rate increase all the way out to 2025 or 2026 is when we have that. So that's significant. If you look at that bottom line as well, our largest meter would go from a $3,502 base charge down to a $2,057 base charge. So significant change to our base rates are recommended with this new plan. The volumetric rates for water, you can see a similar pattern here on the domestic side. It was 2023 would remain flat at 370, but then go up to 390 and then 410, 438, et cetera. Sprinkler would go up from 370 to 475, 538. Well, under the new study, it looks similar to the base. You would essentially have no increase for the domestic customers all the way out to 2025, much smaller increases for the sprinklers out there to that same time frame. on the wastewater side, because the charges that we're talking about are specifically water related. None of that affects the wastewater rates. So the rates don't change with the new study for wastewater. So in summary, all the rates are lower than the previous resolution. We could potentially, again, this is just the plan, and this is just a consultant's recommendation that a domestic usage through a 5/8 meter might remain flat for the next 3 years. So we recommend, as we've already rescinded that resolution, to endorse that new structure that I showed you tonight. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mike, I think about the guy out in Three Creeks who spent his own money to put in an extra meter for his sprinkler or pool or whatever he was doing. And in the past, he's paid a minimum fee on that for 5 years, 4 years, however long we've done that. And now we're going to say, hey, we're going to do away with the minimum fee, but you're going to pay more on that meter than the meter next to it, which we supply you water and sewer for your home.
Correct.
And that will go up at a quicker rate than the water and sewer rate on the meter that's right next to it for your home. And I don't see the reasoning behind that. If somebody's taken the time and paid for a meter and put that in, that we're going to charge them a higher rate when they're not using sewer.
Well, this is
And
water.
increase it at a faster rate than
Yeah.
individuals who are using the meter for their home.
Correct. Excellent points. So the changes would be, you're correct about, we used to charge that base fee of $17 for that base year round, every single month. That customer will no longer pay that. And so essentially that's a $17 a month savings. Is it 17? Yeah, $17 a month they're no longer paying each month, even in those winter months when they were absolutely not irrigating, not using that meter at all for those 3 or 4, as it's maybe a month and a half now in Texas of winter.
And it was
that
more expensive to turn off and turn back on. So everybody just ate it through the winter months. If you understand. So it's a $50 fee to have it turned off?
We're not gonna have to worry about that either because we won't be charging
But-
any longer. So I think if yes, it is true. But the logic of the consultant, again, this is the cost to serve a sprinkler meter. And because you have so much cost to recover, and since you're not charging that base fee any longer, that it costs more than just your domestic rate to recover those additional costs from that sprinkler meter. Again, this is all mathematics. It's their recommendation. When we get time, we're not adopting anything here tonight. When we come back in September to adopt the utility rates, if that's your stance and you just say absolutely not, we won't do it. But that's just more revenue that's got to be recovered from the domestic side.
And
eventually.
what's been said in the past is that, well, now we're not receiving that $17 a month on those meters and we have to recoup that cost.
Right.
Or that revenue. And we were collecting the revenue really when we shouldn't have. So I don't really agree with, if we need to adjust something or adjust both rates, I'd rather water's water. And somebody that spends the money to put in an extra meter for pool and whatnot and is not burden on our wastewater system. I think before the minimum monthly charge, there was an advantage to do that. But when you get up to 572 or you start jacking the rate up on that specific user for watering their yard or filling their pool, I think we're getting a little nitpicky on a homeowner.
Understood.
And maybe I'm early in the process, but
You are, but that's okay. It's a good to
well,
have, good
we've been
conversation to
dealing
have.
with this
No, absolutely.
for a couple of years now.
Absolutely.
And I want to make sure that it doesn't slip through or I approve and vote on something.
Yeah.
And it comes back to bite me.
Correct.
Another point that council certainly needs to be aware of is that domestic rate is for water that is essential for domestic use. And, rates, as we talked about before, the revenue has to be recovered one way or the other. And certainly there can be adjustments in the domestic side and the sprinkler side. The sprinkler component is a little bit more of a discretionary component than the consumption necessary to cook and clean and flush the toilet and those kinds of things. And so everyone has to have domestic. Sprinkler is a little bit discretionary. Yes, certainly understand the objective and goals of that use of water, but
Well, I hate to take the attitude that you're considered a luxury item to water your yard or fill your pool. I think that's taking kind of the wrong stance. I think we need to be a community that allows people to do that. If they want to pay for it, they have the ability to, but I don't think we need to stick it to them.
You know, to that point, we do have volumetric rates, right? So it's not the same rate for the first 1,000 gallons as it is for several 100,000 gallons down the road. Is that correct?
We don't have, I'm sorry, we don't have tiered rates, but you're correct. The first 2,000 gallons are part of the base rate.
Yeah.
And above 2,000 starts to get charged the volumetric rate you see there.
Yeah, and so that's to Sam's point. That's one of the things we do is the first 2,000 is a fixed rate. That's what's necessary to operate a household. The challenge we have is we'll not only have two classes of meters, we have two classes of citizens. Those that have only 1 meter and those who have 2 meters. And those, again, same water, different rates. And for someone like me who has a pool and a sprinkler system, but I don't have sewer, I don't have the economic incentive to spend money on a second meter. And so I get all of my pool and water at a cheaper rate. So I think we just need to be, whatever it is, we shouldn't just peanut butter, but we should be fair. And I think I echo what John said. I think that having a different rate for a second meter may kind of fuzz into the maybe not quite fair category. I think another thing is we're looking at this. There are other water and sewer needs that we will be needing as a growing community. So I would hate for us to come back to kind of and I don't know that this would be a bare minimum rate, but I'd hate to come back, cut back so much that we continue to struggle with our water and sewer. I know that TERS is, we're looking at something right now with TERS potentially picking up some money that could be funded by water and sewer, and TERS could do some other things. So I want to make sure that we don't cut back too far on these rates, that we can't do some of the things that we need as a growing community. So those would be my two concerns.
And if you think that's a drain on the system or taxing the system, 50,000 gallons or 45,000. I noticed some other cities had, if you're really watering a lot and filling your pool up every week, or just running it and using tremendous amount of capacity, that there is an adjustment in the volumetric rate.
Yeah. So when we explored designs, so that's a tiered rate structure. And when we explored the rate design, when we looked at that, it got to where it didn't make a whole lot of change. Because remember, really, as Sam said, you're trying to recover the same amount of revenue from customers. And so how you do that is based upon this rate design. And so, for example, just in these two that we're looking at here, if you'll recall, one of the options that was provided was instead of having two classes of customer, a domestic and a sprinkler, we just have one customer class for a water customer, which is what we have now. But then that domestic rate would have gone up, but I don't remember the number, like 11 cents or some number for all customers, as opposed to having two customer classes where you have the domestic essential usage, paying a lower rate than they would if you had a blended rate between all of these categories. What council decided to do was to go with this two customer class system. That's again what the consultant's bringing back for us tonight are these. But that's how we got to where we got. It's all in the rate design. Next time, if you want us to look at even closer or truly bring back to you whatever it is on a 0 to 5,000 gallons and a 5,000 to 10,000 gallons and over that. I don't think we do that to you. It gets complicated.
I don't think we had council action to go after. I think that was staff direction. I don't think council that we voted to have the two rates, did we?
Yes, you did. When you endorsed the plan at the last meeting, that plan is the one you're looking at now.
Okay, so we should not endorse plans? Because what we said is we would go look at that. I thought it was an understanding that we would go look at that, but there was concern at the last time that that would not be fair. At least it was expressed. So, okay.
What was previously presented was this plan, this rate structure with the components that you have it, and with the overview of the rates as we had it. What we're coming back tonight saying is because of the change in debt issue by the district, that affects the rates, and the structure we're proposing to stay the same, but the rates come down substantially as a result. So where we are right now is with the same structure that was presented and approved by the council at the earlier meeting. It's a matter of the distribution of the rates and essentially how the payment structure, how the payment is allocated for each of the different components.
And tonight, we're not approving the final rate.
No.
Correct. That'll be September.
Okay.
No, but we are, and that's where I'm confused, because last time it was, Mike, you made a statement to John. It's like, hey, when we get to that point, we decide to do something different, we will. But then we get fed back, well, you guys approved this structure. It's like, well, wait a second. I thought we hadn't approved it yet. We're going to. And
I
so
see what you're saying.
are we approving it or are we not approving it? And if we are approving it, then we have a disagreement with it. Then I guess we should, whoever is not for it should vote against it.
Yeah, you're correct. So we asked the consultant to bring back a plan, a rate structure, and that's what she did twice. And so this is now the third amended version of it. And that's all we're asking is you to basically approve that study. But you're right, when it comes down to the actual adoption time frame. Now, this one's not so hard, but I mean, I will bring back a recommendation for 2 customer classes because that's what the plan says, the structure of our rates. But if we said, no, we don't want 412 for sprinkler, we want 370 for sprinkler, we can certainly decide that one. This one's fairly easy. If you go back to that base rate like this by meter size, if you tell me, no, you don't want to do that, then we have a lot more homework to do when we bring a rate.
I think the only hang up is the sprinkler.
Yes.
Because we have a significant number of homes, fairly nice homes that, River Place is an example. Most of them do not have 2 meters.
Yep.
They do not have what, David?
2 meters.
Okay.
Mhm.
Mike, the difference is we're recouping the cost. Is that the primary difference in the rate?
Yes,
Between-
it's like the customers for whom you're collecting. And it's the
Cost of
impact,
it.
it's your impact, your choice of how you wanted that to be. In that example I was giving in these 2 customer classes, we've got, say, 7,000 domestic customers and 700 sprinkler customers. So would you want to affect 7,000 customers make, or everybody pay a little more or recover different from that 700?
What's the city's stance?
Of those 7,000, I guarantee you 2,000 water just as much as those that spent the money on the meters. It's just that they are in older homes that didn't have sewer. There's a lot of homes that are still in septic. So it's.
That's correct. You're correct.
So they're watering just as much as 370, but down the road, I'm paying 475.
Right. But remember that domestic guy is going to pay that minimum bill and sewer
Every month.
every single month because
Yep.
they're not getting segregated. You get the savings in 2 spots. You get savings with the sprinkler meter. You get savings by not paying now. You weren't getting it before. You'll get savings on when you're not using it all because you're not paying any domestic at all. I mean, any base charge at all in the winter months. There'll be literally 0 charge for your sprinkler. And you're also saving on when you are using it because you're not paying for the sewer that goes with that water consumption. So, I mean, that's where you get the savings. It's a mathematical game of how long that payout is. But that's where the savings comes from that investment into a sprinkler meter.
So Mike, if you modeled for us and you pick the numbers, but if you modeled for us what it cost before for the two different kinds of customers and what we were
Mhm.
paying sprinkler wise, and now what we'll be paying sprinkler wise, assuming 3 months of the year, we're not turning the sprinkler on. Just do, I mean, not
I
right
can do
now,
that.
but when we come back to it again, when we've got to make the decision, just show us what the difference is for the year.
I want to clarify what you mean by recovering the cost, because I think what John is saying, and a homeowner who has 1 meter, if he uses 2,000 gallons inside and 2,000 gallons outside, he's paying for 4,000 gallons in theory of sewer, the first 2,000 is included. When you say recover the cost, the second 2,000 at $1 higher per gallon in 2023, half of that is $1. It's $1,000. So we're talking, you're recovering the money lost for charging people what they weren't using. Is that what you mean recover the cost? Because half the water is not going in the sewer, but we were charging for sewer. Well, now we're not. So we're charging a higher rate to recover.
It's not the volumetric side, necessarily. It's the base charge. So the 700 customers, those 700 customers or whatever the number was, has one of these meters. And they were getting charged $17 a month.
In January and February.
January, February, et cetera, right? On top of then whatever they were using. So
So we're saving
That
$17, but we're
$17
charging more in water down the line.
if there's a
$17 that we were charging.
So, yeah, so I just did the math real quick. If we had 700 people that were doing the minimum, and let's say 5 months they didn't irrigate. So 5 months times 17 times 700 customers is $47,000. So what you're doing is you're trying to go up on your rate to recover that $47,000 instead of peanut buttering that 47,000 across all users. Is that correct?
Exactly.
yeah, I could agree with that.
Okay. Well, and I think to John's point, was it fair to be charging up to $17 a month when they weren't using the water to begin with, which is a different discussion, but it's also in the category of the fuzzy fair.
Understood.
I'm also curious, if I walk into the city and say, I have a big yard, I'm thinking about putting in a pool, should I put in a separate meter? Does the city have, I mean, obviously, in the past, there was some benefit to doing that, probably for all. But do we have a stance or recommendation, or do we want those meters, or just indifferent?
It still makes sense because they're not paying for sewer. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. And it's even better that we're not having to pay the monthly fee when we're not using it. And guys, I hear you, but I don't want to, I've got 2 meters. I don't want anybody else having to pay that extra of that other 90% roughly of the rest of the citizenry because I've got 2 meters, which is still saving me more money. And I did the math. I figured it took me about 7 years to pay off, but I was going to be there that long. So I did it. I don't want to, I would rather pay a little bit extra, recognizing that I'm saving even more than put the difference on everybody so that we're all paying the same rate with or without a sprinkler. It just doesn't seem fair to me.
I think my comment to tack on a little bit to that, and I see it as well, but I've also watched, well, we took ARPA money and paid off water bills. We are seeing still today families right here in Belton, Texas that cannot pay their water bill. So I really hate to see that go up if that's possible. But I understand, I understand what's being discussed here too, but I also see families that are not able to pay their water bill right now. And it's being, it's a struggle. So, and they're not watering their lawn. So I think there's a balance, but I don't know what that is. And I probably have way more questions than answers, but I just.
Question of fairness is one that, we all struggle with trying to adjust and figure out what the right balance is. I think that's what we're kind of going round and round with, trying to distinguish the rates and come up with something that's fair. So, we will take whatever input y'all want to give us and try to make any changes. I think the shift to 2 different classes of customers was kind of a refinement of our current rate structure right now. When we had the discussion previously about this issue of who pays, basically, this is where we thought we ended up basically with 2 distinction. And now with the reduction in the rate as a result of the bond issue. So we just need clarity as much as possible. We need a rate structure. And then in about a month, we're going to come back and ask you to approve rates for next budget year. So we don't have a lot of time in order to do what we need to do, but we certainly want to carry out the council's wishes in terms of what structure you want and what the rate should be, basically.
Well,
Since
so,
we-
so just real quick, I think and we can take this offline and maybe work on this, and several of us can talk to you guys and ask, but when I go by UMHB or heck, my house and we're watering, and we're probably watering at just the regular rate, and maybe UMHB's got a commercial rate that's different. But I think going forward, this is a very fair rate going forward, because pretty much everybody that's going to be building in Belton is going to be on sewer because we've put that infrastructure in. But there's a significant number of homes in the legacy additions that are not on sewer. Anyway, so it would just, and we can do that afterwards. We don't have to make the decision. I just think that, again, the two concerns are, let's not go down too low on the rate to make sure that we can do some of the other infrastructure items. And also, let's just review this as far as the fairness, if that's okay.
Well, for tonight, like I say, and we can only even, technically, we could put this off for another meeting. But we're endorsing a new plan, I guess, is what Sam had said. So and this is what the structure that was approved last time, with base rates by meter size that look like that, regardless of dollars, and two classes of volumetric usage, one for domestic, one for sprinkler. If that's, and again, what this plan does is it kind of gives me a guide for going forward the next 5 years, because the consultant is going to say, based upon my study, you should have collected this much revenue. And then I'll come in each September and compare that to how we've been doing compared to this study. And if we're severely over collecting the study, we can go lower than these rates. If we're under collecting the study, we probably should go higher than these rates. But it's a baseline for me to compare for the next 5 years. But if you don't like this idea and you want to go back to some alternative, say you keep the base rate idea, don't like the two customer classes, you can tell me tonight, and I will get our consultant again to give us a combined rate with one class, and it'll be somewhere between that 370 and 412 on that first year. And then we'll bring back that plan for city council approval.
And the only thing that gets me is the rate of increase for the sprinkler person to go 10% per year out to 572. The guy that did that in 3 Creeks to try to save some money, it just defeats his whole purpose.
Is the rate something we can still discuss and keep the structure? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. Well,
We could still
so-
discuss
so
that rate for the sprinkler the
if
sprinkler
we kept the
customer.
structure, if I understand correctly, so the plan would be this. If you said tonight, we agree to this plan as it says there. So 2023, 370 sprinkler. This is the consultant study is all it is. I'm asking you this is what the consultant says.
We can
And so-
adopt other rates.
When it
that
comes
we
to
agree.
adoption time, that's 100% correct.
Okay.
I'm going to probably bring back those 2 rates just because it's the first time to use them, right? But I don't have to. You don't have to adopt that. You could say you want the rates to be anything you want it to be
But we can discuss those sprinkler rates.
Each year.
each year.
Become
challenge-
more balanced, that would be more agreeable. Or address some of the concerns.
Yep.
We have that flexibility.
You
to
have
do
that flexibility.
But you are accepting the 2-tier.
Correct. Exactly. That's all I'm asking. If you don't want to do the 2-tier, I can get her to provide us with a combined rate for those 2 classes. We'll just have one class called water, which is what we have today. And everybody will pay the same thing. I just need to know if that's what you want me to do again.
I hear what John's saying, but also the 2-tier has some appeal to me, because I do think that base rate for everybody, keeping that as low as possible is really important. And I don't mind paying a little extra to put water in the pool. I'm in an old house that it doesn't have 2 meters, unlike Craig. And I should have rectified that some time back, but I do think that base rate, as you said, we've got to collect a certain amount of money to make this all work out. We can adopt this base structure tonight. If you would come back and kind of give us and I hate to ask the consultant again, but I think we need to, from what I hear is we need to look at 2 separate plans, one with two tiers and one without. And then we can look at those and then we could come up with the final penny rate.
Well, and honestly, the 2 tiers, you could just say 2 tiers at the same rate. It's going to yield the same as the 2 or just 1, right? So at least if we could just run the numbers. And also the challenge we have right now is we've got one end of the equation. This is the rate, but it's not on the other side of the equation what it's all going to be paying for, right? So we're just looking at this right now. So if we wanted the 450,000 or whatever it is for water and sewer that is going to be in the park, that's not, what if we decided to add that? Well, that's going to impact the rate. And if we change the rate, well, then that's going to impact what we're going to be able to spend our money on. So we don't have a picture today on both of those. And so, yeah.
So my question is it fair for me to ask domestic folks to pay for my swimming pool and sprinkler? If we're saying we're going to go back to 1 rate and not do the sprinkler rate, is that a reasonable question?
That, from a rate standpoint, that would be what would happen because everybody would pay a higher rate. I can't remember the impact. It's 5, maybe 4 cents, 6 cents, something like that. If you have a 1 combined rate.
And am I not coming pretty close by not paying sewer and
Not paying the monthly fee on energy. Company.
You're ahead, honestly. I mean, and that's where going forward, it's a fair argument because going forward, if you've got sewer, you're gonna be ahead. So it is a no-brainer. The challenges are people like me that don't have sewer. Everybody,
Mike, how many are there that, off the top of your head, how many of our customers do not have sewer?
I don't have that number on top of my head.
That'd be relevant too. I think we landed on 2 rates for the very reason that Dan just outlined, and I did not do a very good job of outlining before. So I think it's fair to look at both ways.
Please don't misinterpret my frustration with thinking that my neighbor has to pay for my pool or my yard. I mean, that's not, water is water, and a higher rate for somebody who's not paying sewer and using it maybe to fill or water. I mean, it's just, I guess the discussion is going to turn into, that's a luxury home, so you're going to pay a surcharge to water your yard and fill your pool. I don't think we need to go that direction.
Mhm. Well, let me do this. We don't have to endorse this tonight. So let's go. I will bring back in September kind of so you can see it.
I don't know why we can't endorse this if we can still continue to discuss the rates. I think we all agree we like the structure you're presented. Am I misunderstanding that?
I agree.
I think we can adopt what you're asking us to adopt, but understanding that we can still discuss the rates.
I think to everybody's point and
Is that right?
to John's point, we can have 2 lines and they can say the exact same thing on either line if it came to it.
Or well, much less.
That's what I was thinking. You could have a more gradual progression. David, did you have something?
Nope, I'm just nodding my head. That's you're saying what I'm
To
thinking.
have 0 increase for domestic and the sprinkler goes up to 480 is pretty drastic, I think, on the folks who put in a separate meter.
Mhm.
That's my point.
Could be a gradual progression. You
Okay.
can bring that back for us to discuss.
I mean, just
I guess my question would be is I don't know that I understand why it's going up that much. I mean, what's the? would
no,
like
I think to the
It's the
flip side,
model. It's the other side of the equation on the amount of money we're going to have to pay for water and treatment and the new water tower and all of that stuff has to be phased in. So we're just basically going up on the rates to pay that. And that's one of the knobs they're using to go up. They're preferentially going up higher on sprinkler system.
But I still think it'd be useful to make some assumptions and show us what it goes up year by year on both models. Because I think there's a pretty significant savings for the sprinkler side in the way it's structured. And it's helpful to see that on an annual basis.
And there should.
The cost of operation, the cost of labor, the cost of maintenance, the cost of repairs. The materials to repair things go up every year. They do not go down. So I mean, I think to John's point, it's not fair to have the sprinkler go up in a sharp angle when the other one is staying flat. I don't think he's saying we have to keep it at 370 and we have to keep the sprinkler at 370. I think 370, 372, whatever the numbers are, I think the domestic can go up as well and the sprinkler can as well. I just don't think they both have to be diverging lines.
Right. Like I say, the numbers you see there are just mathematical calculations based upon allocated costs and recommendations to smooth things out a bit.
So can.
I can't tell you that it's wrong or,
Are you done? Are we
Yes,
done
ma'am.
with this one? Just asking. Can we make a recommendation to approve what you're presenting as far as structure, no understanding that we will be able to discuss the rates for each?
Is that a motion?
It's a motion, but I can't get my computer back on, so it's a motion to approve
Second,
agenda item number 10, to structure the rate structure.
Do I hear a second?
second,
This is.
No, you're right.
That's right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second
Thank you.
to consider a resolution rescinding the endorsement of the 5-year rate structure and endorsing an adjusted multi-year defined rate structure that's designed to provide financial stability. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion passes unanimously, and we will have a chance to tweak several items there when you come back to us. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thanks, sorry.
Item 11, to receive a presentation on the fiscal year 2023 FY 2027 strategic plan and invite public input at the special call city council meeting, which is scheduled for September 6th, 2022. Mr. Listy.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We're presenting our annual update of the strategic plan. We've done this process in-house. We began with a tour of a lot of locations around the city, and I presented to you 12 different themes that kind of emerged from our current process. We got quite a few comments from department heads and council members as well, and I've folded those all into the plan that I'll present to you briefly tonight. The theme that I'm proposing for this next period is growth management. It seemed to be kind of an underlying component of many comments that came out. The plan does reflect the achievements in 2022. It will guide us in the future. All the goals remain the same. Remember, last year we added service delivery as an important component, but otherwise the goals remain the same. We continue to believe the plan is valuable, substantial, and achievable. There were 21 goals this past year, and you have a scorecard that indicates our progress on those. We've identified 22 goals going forward for the 2023 time period. And then, of course, the other goals throughout the 5-year plan are updated as well. The key goal emphasis, certainly governance. In the governance category, we're looking at some policy aspects, particularly articulating growth management. There were a number of comments made by different council members to look at our plan updates. Comprehensive plan has been certainly an issue with recent zone change approvals and other kinds of things. So we'll be working, we've got the utility plan update also underway right now. And so utility plan, comprehensive plan, the TERS plan is about to come forward for final action as well. There was some comments about looking at our tax base. Lots of changes going on with value increases and other things. And so obviously our goal is effective service delivery, but certainly an opportunity for us to look at our tax base on the property tax side, sales tax, to ensure that the revenue balance that we're coming forward with is adequate to meet the service delivery objectives. And as I mentioned, the TERS plan is just about done. We hope to present that in November to you and to the county for adoption and extension for another 20-year time period. Public safety, a lot of progress made in the last year or so, certainly with salaries and capital facilities. And so this year is a year for maintenance for the police and fire department. Quality of life, kind of maintain and enhance those components. All the different aspects, certainly we presented to you a very comprehensive capital improvement plan, which is a companion document to the strategic plan, and really important to try to fund as much of that as we can in-house. Also equipment replacement, Mike's taking a hard look at that with all the departments to try to ensure that we're putting enough money aside for capital equipment replacement. Not achieving it all in 1 year, but we're certainly on a path to do that going forward. And so all those elements, streets, water, sewer, parks, storm drainage, capital equipment replacement, and then we're looking at some enhancements to the library and the finance building as well. Economic development, you just adopted the next step in the Imagine Belton plan, and we're excited to get that process and project underway, working with the city and BEDC in all sectors to make sure we maximize success. And then another goal that was brought up was a review of our tourism goals. And so we've added that as a new goal to look at this next year. What are we trying to achieve? We're certainly doing a lot of things. There's a lot of events coming to town, but maybe some fresh eyes on that to try to see what comes next. Connectivity, another goal that we carry forward. A lot of projects going on, obviously, with TxDOT, with KTEMPO, with federal agencies. The Loop 121 widening will be taking the next step as we finish phase 1 down to Avenue O and I-14 around to I-35. We've already in some discussions with TxDOT about taking the next step on that. So we'll have continuous construction for a while as we continue the progress there. FM 93 widening still in the planning. The Central Avenue Bridge in Yeti Pope Park, we hope to see something coming forward soon on that. It's looking more and more like a rehab as opposed to reconstruction or complete reconstruction of that. And then the East Central Avenue Spring Street Bridge, we're awaiting our proposal for an earmark on that project. We'll hopefully know about that in December, January timeframe. A change in the plan that council should all be aware of course, is after the last feasibility study for FM 2271, the strategic plan for this next cycle is shifting from a state farm to market road, which we have carried for 20 years now, 2 decades, to a local collector street and what we've called an extension of Wheat Road as a result of the feasibility study on FM 2271. I think we've recognized that the need for neighborhood circulation in that area is still there, but the TxDOT's position on the not wanting additional farm to market roads really anywhere in the state is the indication they've given us, really has suggested that we go in a different direction here. And so that's what we're proposing, still trying to address the need, but in a different fashion. And then moving on, parks and natural beauty, obviously, a number of comments that council members made having to do with, in addition to the park improvements that we're planning to Heritage, continue to try to find funding for the Standpipe Park, and in the future, a new park in South Belton, looking at our existing park facilities, some of which are aging and need some attention, maintenance, and other improvements as well. And then obviously continue to cultivate partnerships that we get so much bang for our buck in terms of those partnerships that we have. And then finally, service delivery, again, that component that was added this past year with the principal emphasis being on efforts to exercise servant leadership as we deliver customer service and addressing employee compensation in a comprehensive manner. Council did a great job last year in implementing the compensation study. We need to keep that front and center as we go forward to ensure that we adequately fund that and address those needs to maintain the talent that we have here in the community and do everything we can to retain those employees. So with that, we've updated the goals for all the out years with your direction. We'll continue to do that in the years ahead. And what we will do tomorrow, I'll ask Paul to put this on the website and have that available for the public. We invite public comment at the September 6th special council meeting. And then at the September 13th meeting, when we'll bring all the items back for adoption, we'll ask that you adopt the ordinance approving the strategic plan for the next 5-year planning period. Any questions or comments from the council?
I think it's a good plan. It's disappointing that you and other staff members and councils have worked for 23 years, I think it is total, to create the Lake to Lake or other roads or other names that it's gone by over the years and probably will continue to. But the plan itself, I think, is well stated, and certainly we've made a lot of progress in the past couple of years, and I'm pleased. Do we need to take action on this, or simply the fact that we will?
No, just
I
presenting
didn't
it.
think so. Other
Authorizing
than
us
the
to
fact
go
that we're
forward.
going to invite the public to come at that meeting and give input should they choose to do so.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, sir.
I will say, to Wayne's point, it's not gone in vain. We've got a really nice subdivision with a lot of good planning to allow for circulation for the citizens. So it's a really good thoroughfare. It'd be really nice for us to be able to use it now.
Absolutely. I think the council's vision provided that right away. That's going to allow us to do whatever we need to do in that area to provide that circulation. So that's some real progress. Thank you.
I think the opportunity is to really serve our citizens too. One of the things about the FM road was where a lot of folks from Morgan's Point and Temple coming through here. A local access road is really going to serve Beltonians primarily, and that's not all bad. Item number 12 is again to receive a presentation on the fiscal year 2023 proposed annual budget for the city of Belton. Mr. Rogers.
I'm back. Okay, so tonight is the official night, trumpets blaring, where I am presenting the proposed annual budget to city council. So things start happening as of tonight. So our clock starts ticking as far as adoption, postings, et cetera. All of that starts tonight. But we've talked about this already. We've had some budget workshops, and so I'm not going to spend just a whole lot of time on all of the individual details because you've heard those before. But after those budget workshops that we had, we did have to make some changes to the proposed budget. So the first one is the property tax revenue. So I told you that I was going to bring you back a budget that reflected the no new revenue rate. We'll get into that more in the next item, but the no new revenue rate is 6196. I'm sorry, no new revenue. Voter approval. Phew.
Yeah.
Significantly different thing. The voter approval rate. I was seeing one thing and saying something else. And the voter approval rate is 6196, which is higher than what I had in the original budget that we were talking about. So I did, when I received that just last week, I added $556,000 to property tax revenue in the proposed budget. We did not backfill any expenses to go along with that. I just simply elevated revenues. Doesn't mean that that's where we're going to land. Health insurance costs, our consultant is telling us to expect around a $200,000 increase to our health insurance premiums. So we added that. Our retirement contribution to TMRS fell slightly. Didn't make any real material difference there. You'll recall that we are adding we got approval for a new SRO position, and BISD is going to fund that 100%. So we added that to the budget. You'll also recall from our capital improvements plan meeting, we talked about a new park at Hubbard Branch. And we put $50,000 in there, kind of our share to set aside some of that funding for the park. And hopefully this didn't go away. 1 second. Is that me? Okay, that's me. Good. Okay, this is going to be very difficult to see, actually, obviously. But you have in your slide. So this is what your budget looks like, albeit very small. I just want to touch on a few of these. So the revenue that is the net income that's showing in the general fund in the proposed budget right now is $1,082,000 for an increase to reserves. So, and that's based upon this 61.96 voter approval rate that I added to the revenue that you see at the top. So what's important about that? One thing to note, also included that in the general fund is this $900,000 of one-time ARPA money that is in revenue in 23. So I can't say that that entire $1 million that you see in net income is related directly to that increase in property tax revenue. In fact, 900,000 of that 1 million could be attributable to ARP. So going along there, hotel occupancy tax fund is going to report 120,000 of that income. TERS, that TERS fund that you see, the contributions you see there, that number also includes this higher tax rate that we may not end up with, so I may adjust that. On the utility funds, the two enterprise funds, water, sewer, and drainage, when you see something here in that row called other financing sources, so it's 562,210 in water and sewer. That's how much reserves will be drawn down. That's use of accumulated reserves is what gets reported in those columns. And then the last one, just the more substantial one, BEDC is anticipated to increase its reserves by $1.1 million in 23. Now let's see if we can see something. Okay, so on a budget to budget comparison, resources increase $7.9 million to $44,366,430. Expenditures go up $7.1 million to $41,343,270 on a citywide total.
This is all revenue types, water, sewer,
everything.
Everything. Okay, thank you.
That's all in, all budgeted funds. So let's just look at the general fund in particular. So this chart here is a comparison again between our 2022 budget, kind of where I expect us to end 2022 and the budget for 2023. So you can see that our general fund revenues increased $4.3 million. Property tax again is $1.2 million of that increase. And again, that's based upon that higher voter approval rate that I put in there. Sales tax revenue is expected to go up 10% over the current year estimate to $6,113,000. And then again, that big number at the bottom where you see transfers of 1.6 million, the difference there, 900,000 of that again is ARPA. 700,000 of that is personnel allocations from other funds. On the general fund expenditure side,
Mike, permit fees from 293,000 to 614,000, but then down to under 500 the next year.
correct.
That seems like a roller coaster.
What's happening is we are skyrocketing right now in permit fees, growing at a very rapid pace. My number for next year's budget, I averaged the last 2 years. And so that's what's bringing it down.
Okay.
It's just to be a little more conservative. I don't know if we're going to continue this just skyrocketing pace that we have right now.
Perfect.
It's just conservative is all that is.
Thank you.
And feel free to jump in just like that. Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. Personnel costs are our big driver in expenses. You see that they go up $1.6 million next year. Again, that's full implementation of our compensation study. That includes the merit increases we talked about. That includes the cost of labor adjustment that we talked about in previous meetings. So that's what's driving those costs. In the services category that you see there, the budget of $4,866,000. We have $1 million in this proposed budget for street maintenance, as we discussed previously. Let's see anything other terribly exciting there. I think there's some capital project set asides in that transfer line that you see there at the bottom.
And just to clarify on street maintenance, we're also using, was it $600,000 carryover from the previous year? So we're looking at road and street maintenance of 1.6 million for FY 23?
Yes, sir. And in fact, it may be more than that when we have just a couple of projects that are lingering, but yes, sir, 1.6 essentially.
And just curious, can you guys handle that much work and that many bids and?
Yeah, we're actually quite excited about it. Think of the projects mentioned there, Pearl Street, College and 13th. I'm sure you guys will be excited about that one. So, yeah, and it will really drive the price down a bit that size. We saw some really good numbers on the Heritage Park, the bids come in, so because of the size and scope of it. So, yeah, we're ready for that.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about some catch up there because we've been striving for years to get to this point.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
that's it. To me, that's really exciting, especially some of those projects Matt just mentioned, 13th and College and all that area. But overall, the city's growing quickly, but we still have a lot of old roads that.
That's correct.
Just as a note though, jumping from 800 to 1 million is a big jump. And a penny worth of assessed tax is 184,000. So, if we reduce that a hair and still did 1.4, 1.5, we could potentially drop the tax rate by a penny just by reducing the hair roads.
That's that discussion we'll have next
Yeah.
agenda.
All right, just want to kind of
That's
a little
no, that's-
preliminary work here.
No, that's very true. Very true. Moving on to debt service fund. So we're going to collect again, $1.2 million worth of property taxes. We're going to pay $1.2 million worth of debt service in fiscal 23. Hotels going to resources, $288,000, $105,000 increase there. And expenditures of $168,000 in fiscal 23.
Mike, were we short in our debt service fund for the year, or wasn't there some talk about no balance? Or
Yes,
something?
sir. In fact, we're going to end we will end up fiscal 22 negative in equity. I think the number is going to be between $80,000 and $100,000. That money is going to have to come from somewhere. So it's going to be a transfer from the general fund likely into that debt service fund to make up that delta. I cannot end the year with a negative equity in that fund.
Do you think that has the potential to carry over into 2023?
So potentially, but I am budgeting some slight net income there, $13,000 or whatever that number comes out to be.
Yeah.
So I hope
It's
to
not
build
tiny, right?
that. Yes. Yes, but we're going to have to make up that at the end of this year. TERS. So the TERS budget increases, revenues increase in the proposed budget by $513,000. It's right here in front of me. I don't know why I keep craning my neck to see that. And so, but what I can tell you is the city contribution that you see there coming into the TERS is also based upon that 6196 voter approval rate, which we may not end up with. And the county contribution you see there is based upon their current tax rate, and they proposed a lower tax rate. So both of those contribution numbers that you see currently in 2023 will revise before we adopt. On the expenditure side of the TERS, what's very important to know is that transfers includes many $1 million worth of projects. That's all capital projects, essentially all capital projects that make up that large transfer. That transfer goes from the TERS operating fund into the TERS capital project fund.
Mike, was there anything in the hotel motel or just nothing significant? Is that why we?
Nothing, I'm sorry, I got in back and forth on, nothing significantly changed in hotel motel tax. You can see kind of the revenues. I'm increasing revenues, expect that to continue to grow. Expenditures, nothing terribly exciting. Not trying to diss the hotel people. Water and sewer fund revenue, in the proposed budget, you see in 23, you have water revenues, actually $5,930,000. That's an increase over where I kind of expected to land in 22. Slightly less than what we budgeted. Essentially, we over budgeted for 22. And sewer revenue goes up substantially. And that's due to those rate increases in sewer that we expect to have in 23.
And that's a 40% increase in revenue.
Yes, sir. We've been kind of essentially underfunding sewer compared to the cost of running sewer. So what's going to happen is based upon this discussion tonight of having not the real rates, but based upon the consultant study, I need to reduce that water revenue by about $400,000. Remember, we took out all of those costs. So because we're taking out the costs, I don't need as much revenue recovery for water. So I expect I will go in and reduce that water revenue probably around $400,000 before we adopt.
That's a big swing.
Yes, sir. So on the expense side for water and sewer fund, the debt that you see there, that increase is our debt. That's the city's issuance of the 2022 certificates for those utility projects that we had. Water purchases is where those costs that were for BCWCID are contained. Again, that number I need to revise before I bring back a budget for adoption. That's going to go down by about $600,000 in 2023.
50% increase in water purchases.
Yes, it's a lot because remember they had 2 debt issuances already approved. And plus all their operating costs went up a lot. Let's see. In this transfers, I believe the water and sewer fund is transferring $2.5 million for capital projects in 2023. Fairly significant there as well. Drainage, nothing terribly different from previous years there. Revenues of 582, expenditures of 586. So it'll draw down its reserves by a little bit in 2023. The IT fund, this money comes from other divisions in the city. So it's, oops, I'm sorry, I am doing sticky fingers here. Okay, so it is $1 million worth of revenues, $933,000 worth of expenditures. Building maintenance, similar, the money there comes from other divisions, $495 in revenues and $422 in expenses. EDC to spend a little bit of time on. So just like the general fund, the Economic Development Corporation's sales tax revenue increases 10% over that fiscal 22 estimate, bringing its revenues to $3,114,000. Its expenses for fiscal 23 jump substantially, and you can see that right there in that transfer line of $1.3 million. That is EDC transferring money into its capital project fund to reconstruct South Pearl. They've agreed to fund that project, and we're excited for that. That's what makes that large jump in expenses for EDC. So there are some, just like we had some changes from the previous workshop, there are some things that I need to adjust before we adopt that you've heard me say tonight. So if you decide to adopt a different rate other than 6190, I'm going to lower the property tax revenue that's reflected in the budget. Again, we talked about the expenses related to that water plant expansion. Those will go away as well as some of the revenues. I expect that we'll have to add to some expenditures for carryover purchase orders. Some of those things that we ordered earlier in the year, if they're significant, I may throw those into the 23 budget just to cover those costs. Our group insurance costs, that's our intergovernmental risk pool that we participate in for liability insurance. That I believe is increasing by around $80,000. The big driver there is workers' comp costs. There are some small expenses that may change. And then we talked about this, TERS recently decided to increase its budget for implementing the Imagine Belton plan. And I need to add that to the fiscal 23 budget. So in summary, the property tax rate will fall. You'll determine tonight sort of what that might be. Sales tax revenue increases by 10%. What we can't forget is that I have $900,000 worth of one-time money coming into the general fund, and we can't lose sight of that because next year it's not going to be there. So this budget includes a lot of really good stuff to benefit the community. One of those is that $1 million of street maintenance funding that we've talked about and talked about and talked about. There's a 2% cost of labor adjustment for all employees. Again, as we mentioned before, non-civil service employees could receive up to 5% merit increases. Civil service would get a 2.5% annual civil service step increase. There's 2 positions in the general fund that have been added, and we're cash funding some capital projects with the general fund. On the water and sewer side, as we talked about this whole new rate structure, rates may go up. Obviously, that's not as much now based upon these newer numbers. But we do have higher procurement costs for water, as we talked about. BCWCID costs are going up. Our debt increases due to that 2022 issuance and $2.5 million worth of funding for capital projects. The IT fund also has 1 new position, an IT analyst position that we're adding in 23 proposed budget, and HERS and EDC will spend $3.5 million towards infrastructure projects. So what I would like to do before we get too carried away, and I'm hoping Mike can do it with this. Can I get a mouse to work on that one? Maybe not. Sure. I want to take you just real quick, just to see this, because I hope you already did this. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so there is, let's see if this works. Am I mousing? No. Come on. Oops, now I have nothing. Hold on a second. We're winging. We don't have to do this. Okay, well, quit screen share. Okay, so I just want to show you the cover here. That's your proposed annual budget for 23. If you flip through there a few pages, Chris, you can kind of see, go through, keep going through. So I wanted you to see the budget message, next page. So if you read nothing else in this budget document, I'd like you to read the budget message, flip through a couple of times there, Chris. This is a brief summary of our budget in whole, kind of tells you the big priorities that we had. If you go to where start about the V under save, if you click the bar right above, see where it says save at the bottom, Chris? I'm not going to use my mouse to. Here, stay here. What I kind of wanted to take you to, if you get further along in this thing, you can start to see real budget stuff here and what it starts to look like. I'll sit here and do this all night long if you let me, but please don't. Here, you can have that. So that's the electronic version of your budget document. Lots happening in 23. Tonight is the presentation, but if there's some items that you want to discuss about that, we can certainly do that tonight.
I just had one thought that popped into my mind, because our penny's going to raise about 154,000 this year as opposed to 130 last year. The 100% veterans exemption that we talked about last year that cost us about 2 cents on the tax rate. Have you heard anything about the possibility of that going away with the legislature, or do we expect that will continue and it probably increase?
I haven't heard anything particularly. I suspect it will continue to an increase. There, I think, has been some talk about backfilling cities for some of that loss. That state budget impact, so we'll see where that goes.
Right. I think it's a great idea. I just think it should be shared statewide instead of just focused on Bell County and Coryell County and San Antonio and places that have large military retiree communities. Spread it out statewide, but that's the legislature's issue, not.
They got more votes than we do.
And more money.
So on the question and comments, one, thank you for a very rapid flying through the budget. That's a lot. I guess my overall comment is historically, and again, this is a compliment. With going through budget pretty quickly is a good thing for many evenings, right? Because I remember starting in May and having workshops every week, maybe two different sessions, an early session and a late session, going through a bottoms up budget on everything. And so being able to do it very concisely is really nice. The challenge is if you go too far, then we don't get some of the detail. I think Stephanie made a mention. It's like, what about the hotel motel? We used to spend 20-30 minutes talking about exactly what we were going to do with hotel motel. And I think some of that's good to have. So instead of us going through each of these line by line and making it to a 10 o'clock meeting, would it be okay for us to recommend a subcommittee of the council to work with you on some issues? Because I've got 3 or 4 issues I'd like to discuss, and can we sharpen the pencil here, and do we have to do that? And we could all sit here and nitpick it, or we could just say, okay, well, it's close enough and we'll just accept it. But I think there needs to be an appropriate level of attention, but I don't want to take hours. So that's a general comment without getting into any of the details.
Understood. We did have a workshop already on all of these ones. We start this process on our side about March or so.
Yep.
So yeah, there's opportunity to do just as you would like, having some discussions. If you want to get into those details, we can certainly do that. And I apologize for going so quickly tonight. Again, it's intended at this point to be kind of a reminder, refresher of the workshop information that we've discussed in a little more detail in those previous meetings.
David,
But
you're
we can certainly
proposing Wednesdays or Tuesdays, sit down with Mike and Sam. Is
Yeah,
that
I'm
right?
talking, instead of just individuals, everybody going individually to Mike, that if we have a group of, say, 3, I don't know, we don't want to have to post it, right? So if 3 concerned council members would like to sit down together with Mike to go over 4 or 5, because I think we're now just tweaking 3 or 4 or 5 things. We're not looking at the whole thing because that's been done. That's just one person's thought.
Sure.
Well,
I'm
my
open anytime.
concern for that would be that depending on who those 2 or 3 people were, we might have some different kind of ideas. I'm pretty much in favor of everybody sitting here and sweating it out.
Get ready.
Well, and the thing is it wouldn't be to make any decision. It's just to potentially answer questions, and then whatever's discussed we bring that forward, right? And then just say, here was what discussed. Now, we may not agree with that subcommittee. It's not that we would delegate to a subcommittee to make the decision. It's just to take things offline so we don't.
It's like going over a document and bringing the document back with the changes
With
indicated.
red lines. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And did I miss the workshop? I don't recall a workshop.
Yeah, we had two budget workshops, actually. We had one with a general fund and several funds, and then one water, sewer, and drainage.
Okay.
We used
I think there
to
was some
Just ran
absent.
together for the council meeting for me.
we used to have what, 6, 7, 8, 9 workshops. We'd have one on hotel motel. We'd have one on BEDC. And so what we've done is we consolidated it to a fewer number of workshops. And so just some of the details. And now that and the challenge is the assessor is giving us the information really late. So it's really hard for us to then kind of tweak the numbers. I think I remember when one penny on the tax roll was like $36,000. Was it, Sam, something like that when you came?
I do too.
Definitely. Right. Yeah, if there's interest on the part of one or more council members to sit down with Mike and I, we certainly can do that in the next week or two. We certainly are getting to a point in time. We've got to set a rate tonight, a tax rate tonight that Mike will touch on in a second. But if there's some clarifications needed, we certainly can have, up to, 3 council members sit and, bring your thoughts and ideas and try to see if we can clarify those. And if there is a need for some final tweaking before adoption, we'll certainly have a public hearing on September 6th and then final adoption on the 13th, I believe. So we're certainly about a month away, but if we want the council to be comfortable in the budget that you're adopting. And so whatever it takes to get there, we're certainly ready and willing to do that.
Yeah, that would help me. And I've gone through it. I do have several questions, and not from a nitpicky standpoint, but boy, if there's a way to save $154,000 and cut it by a penny, you know, that might be something to talk about. And you know, general things like, hey, we're adding $1 million to the general fund and we've got 900,000 in ARP money. Can we not have some kind of compromise knowing that we would need to raise the rate next year to fund payroll? You know, just stuff like that, or the 5% merit increase. Well, 5% is the maximum. Do we budget everybody receiving the maximum? No, not historically. Companies don't do that. So, you know, it'd help me to sit down and talk through that. And, you know, nothing negative, but just, I have quite a few questions. I'd like to get some direction or help or,
Sure.
you know,
Certainly we can schedule that.
I don't have any problem with that either. I think it might streamline the process a little. And as David says, it's much more streamlined than it was a few years ago. And I think everyone appreciates that. But to Dan's point too, I would not want that committee to make final decisions.
no,
They can make recommendations or suggestions.
Not at all.
or
Back with the
comments.
red line.
or just get questions answered.
I was gonna say, just answer some questions that we don't need to spend 2 hours on tonight. And make sure that everybody still has a chance before we get down to the.
But I'd suggest that maybe over the next couple of weeks, we schedule times for council members. And if you're interested in participating in that, you certainly can do that. Sounds David, John, I know you've expressed an interest. I don't know if there's anybody else that would like to do that, but we certainly want to make it available to whoever would like to participate. And
And if
and
we
get
have
your
more
questions
people who
answered.
wish to participate, we could have two separate meetings and have
Good.
three and three.
Mhm.
And flip on who's the odd man out, but they can meet directly with Mike, one-on-one for lunch.
Mike's buying.
Mike's back.
I
Any
serve
other
your
questions or comments about Mike's? No action on this item tonight?
Yeah,
Just-
And the reason I bring, and I know we're not on the rate yet, but I know that what we'd said is, hey, if we go with the staff approved rate and decide to lower it, we can, but if we started a lower rate, we can't go up. So I was gonna pair, hey, let's continue to sharpen the pencil. It streamlines that we can adopt the staff approved rate. And then hopefully, like with John's saying, maybe we can save a penny here or there by thinking about some things differently. So that's the motivation.
Bottom, correct?
That's right.
So
Yeah.
can we look at that and then maybe?
Right.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Item 13 is to call for a public hearing to be held at a special called city council meeting on Tuesday, September 6th at 5:30 PM at the Harris Community Center for the City of Belton annual budget for its fiscal year beginning October 1, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023. So Mike,
Nothing further to add.
nothing further to add. We need a motion to call for a public hearing.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second to call for a public hearing for September 6th. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 14, discuss and consider a proposed ad valorem tax rate for the 2022 tax year, fiscal year 2023. Mike. Okay.
Okay. So we just talked about budget. Let's talk a little bit about the tax rate. Chris. There we go. Okay. We, last week we received the certified tax roll from Belcad. And the 2021, last year's value was $1,542,000,000. In 2022, our total value is $1,848,000,000, a 19.81% increase. If you look at the components of that, $305 million of that $1,848,000,000 is made up of captured value within the TERS. The TERS values increased 24.67% from 245 million to 305 million in 22 tax year. Subtracting those two out leaves $1,542,000,000 worth of taxable value that generates revenue for operations and debt. New value to the that was added to the roll from January 21 to January of 22 was $66 million. So that left 200 and, well, difference between three and that's like $240,000 of increase to existing property values for the year. So looking then kind of at the tax exemption side of the house, our total market value is $2.645 billion. There's a $25 million kind of agricultural loss, which means our total appraised value is 2.6 billion. The homestead cap reduces that by $165 million, brings our total assessed value to $2.454 billion. And there's $606 million worth of exemptions. That's 25% of that assessed value. The plus side of that is that number keeps going down. It was 30. The other side is it's still a lot of money. So that brings our total taxable value down to that $1.848 billion. So with all that now in that we've received, now you have to start doing some calculations. The first one of those is the no new revenue rate. The no new revenue rate is the rate that generates the same amount of revenue from properties that existed in both tax years. Okay, and there's an inverse relationship between the property values and the no new revenue rate. So as property values goes up, the no new revenue rate goes down. As property values go down, the no new revenue rate goes up, just mathematically. That's the way that works. Next, we'll talk about the voter approval rate. Well, there's two components to a tax rate. There's the debt service rate that generates enough revenue to make your bond payments. And then there's the maintenance and operations rate, which basically pays for salaries, supplies, all the everyday stuff that we do. The voter approval rate is the rate that raises 3.5% more money for M&O plus your debt service rate. It gets even a little more complicated. So there's also an unused increment rate now that can be added to that 3.5% voter approval rate. The unused increment is that banking, if you will, of when we adopted a tax rate that was less than voter approval, that you get to bank that for like 3 years. And you add that to the voter approval rate. There's also a de minimis rate. The de minimis rate is the rate that would generate $500,000 of new money essentially to you for M&O plus that debt rate. And if the de minimis rate exceeds the voter approval rate that we just talked about, then it's actually the de minimis rate that makes it go to voters. I didn't write this stuff. So the 22 values, using the 22 values, our no new revenue tax rate is $55.94. We're currently at 63 cents. The de minimis rate is 59.64 cents. And the voter approval rate, as I mentioned before, is 61.96 cents per $100 of taxable value. So tonight you need to propose a tax rate for the fiscal 23 budget. That budget itself has M&O revenues of 8.3 million, debt service of 1.1. Again, that's 61.96 cents. I intentionally increased the revenue in the proposed budget to match that number. Doesn't mean that we're going to go there. I just put that in there because I told you I'd bring you back a budget that reflected the voter approval rate. So what'll happen is if you adopt a budget or if you propose a tax rate that's lower than this 61.96 voter approval rate, we'll modify the revenue reflected in the proposed budget prior to adoption because it's your budget that determines your tax rate. So management recommends a tax rate of 58.5 from 63. That's a 4.5 cent tax rate reduction. It still generates sufficient funding for our $1 million worth of street maintenance. The employee compensation study implementation, there's new positions and then significant funding of capital projects. That number also recovers $762,000 of additional property tax revenue, which is about half of the $1.3 million that it costs to implement the compensation study. That $762,000 of new property tax revenue also helps us next year when that $900,000 of ARP money is gone.
Okay, so we're not having to make it all up next year or promise that we will. So we're going to have, so this schedule that you see here, and I have a better version probably in a bit that we can play with. This shows the current year tax information. And then I've included in green the information that would, the additional revenue that's raised at the no new revenue rate, 55.94. At the 61.96 cents in blue is the voter approval rate. And management's recommendation of that 58.5, and you can see kind of the differences there. So essentially, let's just start in that red right there. That's the one we're talking about. So the total tax levy with a 58.5 would increase by $1,093,000. The part that goes towards O&M is $762,000 increase in property tax revenue. The debt service of 0770, that's the debt service rate, causes an increase of $129,000 to property tax revenue. Now you'll note that 762 plus that 129 is not that 1,093,000. That's because the difference between those two numbers is like $200,000. That's how much goes to the TERS. Okay. So at the 58.5 that we're talking about, the interesting number here is the average home value in Belton went from $210,000 in 2021 to $240,000 in 22 tax year. If you proposed a rate of 58.5, that average homeowner would pay an additional $78 in property taxes for the entire year over what they paid last year of $1,327. On the no new revenue, the homeowner would pay $16 more. And under the voter approval rate of 61.96, that homeowner would pay $161. And we'll come back to this chart. So bear with me a bit. So what are your options tonight? You could propose a tax rate of 58.50, which is our recommendation. So what'll happen again, remember I had mentioned that the budget as it sits today reflects 61.96. So I would reduce the revenue in the general fund by $533,000 prior to adoption. Doing so, we would still increase reserves in the general fund, but instead of being $1,082,000, the reserves would increase by $549,000 essentially. So we're still padding ourselves for that time when the ARP money goes away in 24, right? Still able to do our business at the 58.50. You could approve the voter approval rate of 61.96 if you wanted to tonight. Or you could propose a lower tax rate and either cut some expenses that you have on the top of your head, like street maintenance we referred to. It's an easy one to do. Or not cut any expenditures. For your information, each 1 penny is $154,220.
That's in last year's budget. This year's budget, it's going to be 184, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
The chart that you showed earlier, with the new rate, the new appraised values, it's 184. 154 was last year's.
Yeah, no. That the $1,880,000 is total tax value.
Oh, you're talking about
300,000 or 300 million of that goes to the TERS. So the net effect for general government is that 154.
It just happened to be about the same number.
It just happens to be about the same number.
Gotcha.
So for tonight, we need to propose a tax rate because I got to start publishing stuff, right? We got to schedule public hearings. You can adopt a rate that's lower than what you proposed tonight, but not higher. Now, technically you can, but that means we've got to go through all the notice requirements again. So I would say this is your cap. And you could look at it as, and some cities do, some cities councils will say, we're not going to exceed this amount. This is their proposed rate is a cap on what they will approve. Doesn't mean that that's even what they're going to consider. But you could do that. We need to post the rates and notices, hold the public hearing, which is scheduled for September 6th, and then we'll adopt the tax rate on the 13th of September. So I'm going to go to Chris, if you could pull up that Excel sheet. Hold us. We have a spreadsheet that we can play with all day long on what numbers you want to see and see what kind of difference it makes on tax rate.
Mike, I noticed that the school district in the past year, and I think this year also, they're going to adopt a deficit budget. The county did the no new rate, and it appears as though both of those are kind of banking on new property being added to the tax roll. Any idea or an estimate on the historical number for new property that would be added to our tax rolls, or the additional income received from?
That 60, okay, so the 66 million in new value will generate about $380,000
And that was for 2022.
for the current, for 2023, for next year.
Okay.
That's the new value added to the roll. That 66 million is about twice what we've seen over the last 3 years. Usually when I'm giving it, it's about 31 to 35.
But we aren't accounting for that. This isn't, that really in the 66. Was that in our?
Yes, that's in everything you see here.
1.8 billion.
So yes, that's.
But based on the permits, right? So it's my understanding that we have these high number of permits this last year, which means they'll be on the ground. So they usually aren't taxed for another year. So we should anticipate that 2024, right? So we're looking at, I always get the years confused. So what we're looking at is the 22-23 year. So the next year, the 23-24 year, we should see a pretty good increase because of the number of permits that have happened this last year.
Yes,
correct?
Councilman Lee's 100% correct.
It's a last year.
In fact, so remember when I showed you the exemptions, which there was the cap on homesteads, that's $165 million. That basically, that's the value above 10 that a residential home increased. So it is quite likely that well, that'll be existing value, but that's going to continue as long as values remain elevated somewhat. It doesn't, they reevaluate every year, so it doesn't guarantee it. But because that number is so high, and that's higher than previous years, that we're likely to see some fairly reasonable high increases for the next year.
So if we look at these numbers, let's say, for instance, our values increase 10% next year. How much? That's, you said one. Yeah, I'm trying to look at that chart. Anyway, but right now, most people believe that appraised values will go up another 10% next year, either because you've already exceeded and you got that kind of 10% per year because of your homestead exemption, the rate, and then also we've got new construction. So we anticipate next year is still going to be higher, pretty significantly.
I would anticipate that. I can't tell you what that number will be. It'll likely be higher than historical because of the reasons you suggest.
Yep.
But I would be skeptical if it's going to be another 18, but I could be off there.
Okay.
Can you there? Okay, so we're here. Okay, so this spreadsheet is what you've been looking at. We have on that a column in yellow that I've titled Playing with Rates. And so as you're discussing a rate tonight that you may want to propose, if it's something other than 58.50, we can add that. We can change that number and we can see what the effect would be. So now tonight we need to have a hearty discussion, I'll remind you, only because when it comes down to adoption time in September, it takes 5 of you to adopt a rate that exceeds the no new revenue rate. So if we're going to arm wrestle and that sort of stuff, we need to do that tonight.
Well, and going back to what I mentioned before, I personally think we could shave some more dollars off of this, but it may be in this context sound like picking at nits. I'm okay with going with the 58.5 because it's lower than the voter approval rate and lower than the de minimis rate. So it's lower than both of those, at least to say not to exceed. And then what we can do is sharpen our pencil over the next several weeks to get to that landing zone of, where 5 of 7 can approve it.
I agree.
I agree. And I
58.50
think
is
with
the
the
right way.
unknowns and things that are coming up, I think that's, I completely agree with the 58.50.
Is there a desire to look at any other rates so you can kind of
Yes.
see the impacts on the residential right now, just so that you can kind of see it? Would you like to see 59, 60?
My thought was 59 because as we've talked about, that would be the cap. If we cut a few things or find extra money in the street or whatever it is, we could go lower, but there are a lot of
Why
uncertainties.
don't you plug in 59 so they can see what the effective 59 would be?
59.
It's already there.
Did you click it? Yeah.
It's there. It's already at 59.
Okay, so with that one, you can see that it's instead of $762,000 here, I'll do it this way. Instead of $762,000, you see for O and M, that number would be 839. And the tax effect on a taxpayer is about $90 for your average homeowner.
Well, right now, we're already the lowest rate of any major city in the county at 63 cents. And I noticed that one of the neighbors is just going down to 63 cents. If we went down to 58.5 or 59 either, we're showing that we're, I think, being really good stewards of our money. I'm not saying that we might not find some savings somewhere along the line, but I like the idea of a cap and then come back and do the fine tuning. Just my personal opinion.
This may be a ridiculous question, but what was the number for the dollar change from 2020 to 2021 for the homeowner? Do you recall that?
That's a good question. I don't recall that, actually.
Curious what
We
the
can.
difference might be.
We can look it up.
It's 14% difference, right? So the average home is 14% different. So it's going to be, it's 10% different, right? So 10, 20% of that, whatever, $50.
So you're saying 50, David?
Yeah, I think it was like $50.
Dollar change? Okay.
Was it last year that we did no new revenue rate, or was it the year before?
We went less than voter approval. No, I don't remember. I'll be honest
Well, I
with you.
didn't
Let's
mean
just,
to ask a belaboring question. I was just curious what the difference.
that,
would be.
that, I can get
I
that.
can certainly tell you next time.
The thing the challenge is, the thing it doesn't take into account is that's assuming your home value didn't increase. And pretty much everybody that we know, their values increased at least 10%. So this doesn't account for increase in their individual appraised value. These are just average numbers.
Right. Well, and that's, the average. So everything that gets posted by law is the average home value. That is given to us by the appraisal district. It's a specific code, state code that they use, A&E, I believe. So yeah, they're the ones that tell us, and that's nothing more than total value for that particular category divided by number of units to get to that average homeowner.
And this year it went from 210 to 240.
Yeah, so that there, it does, what you're seeing here does reflect the effect on your average homeowner. But as I always say with these discussions, your mileage may vary. So, if you've got a $500,000 house, your effect's going to be more than that.
It would also be good. Usually we've compared ourselves when we're looking at rates like this to see where's Temple, where's Killeen, because these are the people that, when they choose to live and build a house, they're going to live in one of those other communities. So we want to make sure we're competitive So I don't see, I know you guys said we're lowest, but I don't see that.
So I do have Bell County just this week proposed a rate that is 5.5 cents lower than their rate last year. We're talking about 4.5 for us. That's their no new revenue rate that the county's proposing. The one thing that we can't forget when we compare ourselves to other cities is that we're not that other city. Everybody's different. For example, 1 penny tax in Bell County brings in $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Our 1 penny brings in 150,000. Temple lowered its tax rate proposed tax rate that's 1.65 cents lower than last year.
Yeah, but what I'm looking at is just the absolute, because we usually would have like the list of the cities and what their rates were. Because like Temple also has Bio District and Temple College.
DC Bio Science
and I don't know. I'm talking City of Temple, is what I'm talking about. City of Temple is almost at voter approval.
What is that?
0.5 cent under voter approval
and
rate.
their rate is what?
62.35 is what they proposed.
The 1 penny is like 700,000.
I didn't write that one down, but I think it's about right.
What did you say?
700,000.
Colleen,
That rate doesn't include the Bio District or the college.
I believe that's just simply City of Temple.
Yeah.
Colleen proposed a rate that's 7.71 cents lower than last year.
But what was it last year? It was over 70 cents. wasn't it?
Yeah, it's now they're down, their proposed rate is 62.33.
See, those are the good numbers that help us when we're looking at, hey, 58, 59, 42, whatever the number is. If everybody else is like 20 cents higher or 20 cents cheaper, then that influences our relative, it's the relative value. Honestly, this is an economic development tool. It's a very useful economic development tool to be, to get the value from your tax rate.
We can have a comprehensive list of all those at the next meeting, prior to adoption. But obviously tonight we need to just pick a rate that you cannot exceed with your final adoption.
I'm for the 58.5 and work back from there. I didn't know if there was a motion or.
Need a motion?
Actually, this needs to be a record vote. So we need a motion and then everybody needs to vote individually.
I have a question. Why you spend so much time on the budget and you budget at voter approval rate, but why then so easily recommend 58.5? Is there not a reason to try to budget tighter from the beginning at what we think might be lower, or?
It depends on how much you're going to catch me on fire.
Okay. It's clearly a compromise recommendation. We recognize the downward pressure on property taxes, but we also recognize the need to do what we need to do. And this is a quality of life community. You just, pushed forward the strategic plan. All those quality of life items are very, very important.
Right.
And we want to be the community of choice in the area. Now, we don't want to have a 75-cent tax rate in order to do it. And we don't believe we have to. So it's clearly a compromise. I think what Mike has said is that the rate at 58.5, we believe can still achieve the $1 million a year, $1 million for street maintenance. It can achieve the kinds of things that we talked about in terms of maintaining the compensation plan, and then just the normal operations, the increase in costs for, supplies and gasoline and all those kind of things. So
No, I get it. I mean, we spend so much time looking at a budget that is
certainly a lot of internal debate about, 60 cents felt very comfortable. It's still a 3-cent tax reduction, but that you can see.
Oh yeah,
Put
I know what it
60
would do.
you know what 60 cents will do.
Yeah.
So 60 cents will get us over $100 per household, for the average house. And as David said, average is just average. That's a $240,000 house. But we're trying to find a compromise that is something that the council is comfortable with, that the community is comfortable with, that achieves the objectives that you want. And, we recognize it's going to be important to propose a reduction in the tax rate. And so, where we finally settle is certainly a council decision to try to see what's best for the community in this next year, recognizing that this is just 1 year and that there are substantial salary adjustments that have gone forward that we want to be able to absorb and then deal with in future years. So lots of balls in the air, basically, as you evaluate a property tax rate for the general fund side of the budget.
But you feel like we can achieve what we've talked about and what's in our strategic plan at 58.5 based on your projections?
Yes, sir.
Yes, because remember, as I was discussing the budget, I increased only the revenue side when the higher tax rate kind of came in. So we have that to play with, essentially. Had we needed that 61 because I've got that much expenses to cover, I'd fight you a little harder on exactly what you're saying. Maybe it needs to stay closer to that. But I think we have some wiggle room. 58.5 still does, it's a good reduction to the property tax rate. It
Substantial.
still gets everything that we wanted to get done and buys us a little cushion for next year when we know that one-time money goes away.
Okay.
I like it. Thanks.
So
for
we made a
instruction.
motion. Did you make a motion?
I thought David did.
Did David make a motion?
Um,
No one.
Yeah,
made-
I'll restate. I did make it in the form of motion, but I would recommend that we adopt the 58.5 as a not to exceed tax rate for our consideration.
Would you mind changing that motion to propose a rate instead of?
I
adopt?
would make a motion that we propose the rate of 58.5 as a not to exceed rate as we deliberate further.
Thank you.
Well, I think John already made it and we'll count that as a second, Amy.
Okay, second.
Well,
Either way.
either way, just so that
Yeah.
we've got a motion and a second either way.
8 o'clock's my limit.
Okay,
So we need to go.
roll call vote.
Amy called, right?
And the vote is to propose a maximum rate of 58.5 for next year, correct?
So, Councilmember O'Banion,
Yeah, yes.
Aye.
Aye.
yes.
Sorry.
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Pearson,
Aye.
Councilmember Kirkley,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Booker,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Aye.
Mayor Carpenter.
All right,
Pretty nice.
thank y'all, everybody, for the comments, and Mike, thank you for making it more understandable and certainly more better visuals and help some of us work through it. We got more work to do, but again, the process has been streamlined and we appreciate that very much. Item 15, call for a public hearing to be held at special call city council meeting on Tuesday, September 6th at the Harris Community Center, 401 North Alexander, for the proposed tax rate for the 2022 tax year, fiscal year 2023.
That's pretty simple.
Pretty simple. Do I
I'll make
hear
a
a
motion. I'll make a motion.
Second.
have a motion in multiple seconds? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 16, presentation of the FY 2023 proposed fee schedule for the city of Belton. Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
It's a party, Mike.
As stated previously in the meeting, we did go back through all of the fees and rates that we charge to ensure that we are capturing our costs. So I was going to present to you proposed changes in the fee structures. These will not be adopted tonight. This is just a discussion. These will come back to you at the special called meeting on September 6th for adoption at that time. Okay, starting at the library, they've had a policy where they don't charge for the first 12 pages to students. They did some research to realize that they're spending a whole lot of time collecting for others in the library for those first 12 pages. So they're just recommending that we do away with the charge for the first 12 pages and then charge the 25 cents per page after that. House moving permits, we're looking at increasing that to $150 plus a $500 cash deposit or $1,000 surety bond. And then we're adding that they need to have the cost of the police escort and the cost of any tech stock coordination if it's needed, included in that cost.
Here.
The fire department cost recovery fees, these are the fees that Chief Fontenot spoke with you earlier tonight and set those forward. You can see what those are. But it's basically a redo of what had actually already been in there. Some of it's an add. Brush collection for non-residential customers, we're looking at increasing that from $50 per load to $100 per load. We had some commercial customers who realized that that was a pretty good rate. So they used us more than we anticipated them to. So we want to make sure that we are recovering our costs on that. So we're increasing that to $100. Alcoholic beverage permits, there was a big change at TABC in the last year or so. And so basically the fees that we charge are no longer 1/2 of the state fee. So we're just changing that language to say they're equal to that set by the state. Driveway permit fees, they did a calculation of costs and realized that we needed to increase that fee from $60 to $75. Water tapping fees and water meter fees, this is a complete change from the way that we've charged it in the past. We're proposing a base fee of $1,000 and then the cost of each meter up to the 2-inch meters. The 3-inch meters will be installed by the customer. Those are typically your larger like apartment complexes and that type of thing. And then we've clarified that the water tap and the meter with no street cut is the base fee plus the cost of the meter plus $500, which includes the tap, service line, cutoff valve, and the meter box. And then those with the street cuts, that fee is no longer $500, it's $1,000. This is basically a clarification and a change in philosophy from what we've charged in the past. If you have any particular questions about that, I'll be glad to let Matt explain it to you.
This seems like one of those areas. I know obviously when developers are developing, they're putting in their own water lines and they're installing meters at that time. I do know that I understand we own the water lines, but I feel like this is one of those areas where so much could go wrong that could cost us so much time, labor, material. If you had to have a license on file to be able to tap into water lines for the added meters, the second sprinkler meter, they paid for the meter through the company that's approved by us. We don't sell it. I just feel like we're taking a big risk in this area. Like we break a water line, we got to fix it. Well, they break a water line, they got to fix it. A customer would also get a better deal because they've got to have somebody come and dig and put a water line in all the way to the line. Then we got to stop. They got to come. Then we got to come back in and tap it. And then somebody's got to come back and put it together because we don't connect our water line to our meter, right? We just put the meter in. And so it feels like a hodgepodge to me. And this may be the best way. And I'm not saying it's not. I feel like there could be some opportunity here not to have to worry about it, but also we also don't have to worry about worst case scenario while installing that line.
And to be clear, we're talking about 3-inch and above or just.
I'm kind of talking John's second meter, right? That he paid somebody to come dig a line, run it, then he paid the city to dig the hole and tap the meter. Like let's say our excavator guy busts a water line, breaks something, damages something. Now we're on the hook. If you have an independent contractor that is licensed to do that work for us on our water lines with water meters we approve, they do that same mistake. Now they pay for it. And so I think, that base fee, that damage might far exceed, and now we're just in the hole. Whereas maybe we don't charge them, we charge just a permit fee type thing. We are now clear of worst case scenario. But again, like I said, I know we own the water lines and that's a valuable resource, but it's just something for discussion in this realm.
I think we were talking water purveyors the other day of just our water system through it that we handle. That would be a shift from completely how we've done business. so to speak, in the past. I certainly hear you. I think there's probably people that you know that you would trust that could do that work well. There's also probably developments where you would be less skeptical. That they're gonna tap that line properly. That they're gonna set it the way we need it to be set. And so that's why we always taken off every single meter that's really below 3 inches. The city's always installed that. And so that's just kind of working off that method for it. So
Certainly, we own the meter back.
sorry, what's that?
We own from the meter all the way
Correct,
down
yeah.
to the water line and beyond.
Let's do also, remember too, that this meter has to talk to us at the city. And we use Neptune meters that we have to get certain information off of that meter and in order to import that information into our system. The concern would be somebody just installing whatever brand they wanted to meter because it's cheap and that kind of stuff. So we have a little more control of all that data on these smaller meters.
No, and that's why I was saying, you know, it'd have to be an approved meter that we approve. And, you know, we have somebody on site, I'm assuming supervising this meter tap with the guys doing the work. And so I think, I don't know, it's just, I think it's a topic of discussion because, you know, that one time worst case scenario could cost us easily probably 20, 25, 30 of these meter installs. Whereas if somebody else does the damage, they're liable. You know, there's still, I don't, just being the construction.
I think it's a valid, honestly, Daniel, I think it's a really good question. It's, do we want, instead of being a self-perform, do we just want to regulate, right? This is the meter, it has to be Neptune, it has to do this. You have to be certified, so you have to be on our list of approved people. I think the general concern though is the damage that we can do, we can recover. The damage that they could do could potentially wreck, you know, everybody's boiling water or they lose water to an area. I think that's probably the bigger concern is the risk level. But I think it's worth thinking about is to go to self-perform with regulation. I don't know that we can do that.
And like I said, I'm not saying this doesn't work. I just being on the other side of, you know, at times where you might not have to drain your resources to go in and fix if like kind of like the fire department, if somebody goes and maliciously sets something on fire or, you know, causes an accident, they get billed for it. I mean, we could do the repair and then we send a bill for the repair. And so, I mean, it's kind of one of those deals where if we're talking about it, I think it's good to talk about.
I think it certainly warrants a discussion, you know, public water system. We certainly want to be sure
correct
of what's done and how it's done and carefully done. All our folks are licensed and qualified and capable in order to perform that service. And so I think it is a philosophy of how that service is performed and ensuring that it's done properly, not having to regulate every meter and that's going into a subdivision as opposed to us doing that. It does put some responsibility on us, but certainly we take that responsibility.
Matt, is that the typical procedure for our surrounding communities?
Yeah, that would be installing their own.
I noticed that some other municipalities have a water engineering and inspection fee. Is that on our list or is that something that we charge for after?
I'm not
The-
sure that might be more part from the review standpoint of what we're doing. Obviously, we sign off on the inspection side, as Daniel was kind of mentioning there. We have somebody on site that basically it's green lights the tap to be in service. So that we certainly talk a lot about water and a lot of water design and through our development review committee and our engineering team. So that might fit a little bit more in what you may see coming here with some review fees, things like that, and just ensuring that we're encompassing that while we're going through.
Thank you.
I think Georgetown charges 500 a dwelling, and then 250 aside for multiple.
We can look at, investigate that and bring that back to you.
Amy, anything else on your list?
We stopped at just the meters. You have more, right? Okay.
Next is the utility disconnect and reconnect fees and evaluating the charges for those. We've decided that they needed to increase slightly. So we're going from 20 to 25 during normal hours and from $40 to $50 after hours. The
Is
water
that-
rates, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but does that really cover our cost?
Yes, sir.
Especially after normal working hours? Just,
Yes, sir. We have, my understanding. We have reduced the number of outside normal working hours to minimal. And most of it is occurring during normal hours.
So we're talking at these times, usually, say a customer will come in at 4:58 on a cutoff day, they've been shut off all day long, and then they'll want their water turned on. In the past, my staff has said, absolutely, we'll be out there. And that just doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't, because you have, it's not just one request, it's many requests at that same time, and then Maribel, the meter folks will be out most of the evening. So what we've limited that, I've directed my staff to, when somebody comes out, is to say, we'll try to get out there, but we can't guarantee it. And by doing that, the intent is to limit those after hours, reconnects, as Amy mentioned. So we've reduced that significantly. We just won't simply go out and do it.
okay, thank you.
Okay, on the water rates, we talked about those earlier in the meeting. Those will be set at a future time, once council has made a decision on how they want to structure those. Sewer rates, minimum bill being $16.25 and the volumetric rate $7.50 per 1,000 gallons over the 2,000 minimum in the base rate. These have not changed from the original presentation. Zoning fees, those are increasing slightly from $250 to $300 in most cases. The variance requests are going to increase from $100 to $150. When they do administrative approvals where there's a zoning variance, that's going to increase from $50 to $60. We've also increased the future land use map amendments and added thoroughfare plan amendments to that, and that would increase from $100 to $300. Subdivisions and developments, we've added a commercial site plan review at $150 and done away with general development plan reviews. All the plats are increasing from $250 to $275, and then from $3 per lot to $5 per lot plus recording fees. And then we've, excuse me, we've added residential replats and administrative plats. You can see the fees that we're proposing for those. The public information request fees, the state establishes what those are. We have them in our fee schedule listed out in detail. They've gone through and they've taken some out. So just overall to make it match what the state says those fees are supposed to be. Under our other miscellaneous fees, we had right-of-way abandonment applications, but we've also had abandonment requests for streets and alleys, utilities, those types of things. So we've added those to that description. And then we also added a cost for a street use license at $100. We're increasing off-duty police officers from $38 an hour to $50 an hour at $100 minimum. And then the fire department has said there will not be off-duty firefighters. And obviously we don't have an ambulance to have standby for. So we're removing those two items from the fee schedule. No action is required from council tonight. Like I said before, this will come back to you for adoption on September 6th. So tonight is just discussion
How are standby ambulances at the football game?
I was wondering the
How are
same
they
thing.
Same thing.
through AMR.
It's a different company.
AMR was
It's not
doing
city.
it. We were back doing it, but that ambulance that was standby at the football games was not the transport. They were only to stabilize the patient until another ambulance could come in and transport. AMR with staffing issues isn't able to do that. So we're now doing it with off-duty firefighters and medical bags that we have. We go out and do those here in town.
So do we need to add that
But no
back in?
fee?
No, the fee's already in there for personnel. What we charge is for 2 personnel for.
Oh, back in the
3
fire
hours.
department
It's
rates?
in our normal fire department. It's under that special events.
Okay, okay, thank you.
And what about the sidewalk ordinance from 70 cents to $70.
Yes,
per square
that
yard.
was a mistake, originally presented at 70 cents a square yard, and that wasn't even close to the cost of sidewalks. So Matt checked with KPA, and we looked at some bids that we'd received recently, and at $70 per square yard is about average.
And that's if the city's putting in the sidewalk?
Yes, or fee in lieu of.
And the 70 is still.
But
I
that's
can see
pretty-
Daniel there.
Yeah, that's
Still-
pretty cheap, isn't it?
It feels that way.
Yeah, I think there's a large change from 70 cents to 70. I think that might be something we consider in the future.
The hard part is the hard part is just depending on quantity. I mean,
Right.
if you have a small frontage, you're talking about a higher price per foot. If you have a mile of frontage, it's way cheaper per foot actual install. So I mean, there's
Market average?
I think the bottom line here is an oversight on my part, finish the process. We did.
We're good. Don't, we're good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good.
the
So it's after 8.
I want to say,
I had one, I don't know if
Get a
it's
dollar a
worth
year.
adding, over the summer, obviously, the, fuel and gas prices. You saw a lot of, fuel surcharge fees, so on things like water meter taps, things where there's a lot of heavy equipment and a lot of diesel being used. I don't know if that's something that's worth looking into for future. I don't know how much we're on a nickel and dime, but that's one of the biggest uncontrollable factors is fuel price. And, you don't have to go in and adjust your rate every time. You can just kind of say, it's just something to food for thought. So.
We'll look into that.
And the water rate you presented, that'll, because we've been looking at this different set of numbers for so long, that'll just reflect whatever we decide.
Yes,
upon.
when we bring it back on September 6th, we hope to have the rates that you want in there
Just want to
detailed.
thank you. Thanks, Amy.
thank you very much, Amy. Any other comment on that item? If not, there's no further business. This meeting is adjourned.
Let's do an executive session.
All right.
John?
Works in a workshop.
Bite your lip.
Uncle.
Good night, guys.
You Newton John on.
Have you never been mellow?
I think that is all we can do all weekend.
Oh,